My first LEGO Ninjago episode from a couple weeks ago has gone over so well that all of you in the comments have essentially been Darething me to do another round. So we're doing that today. I'm once more redrawing a bunch of Ninjago characters that you all requested in the last video in my art style, with a few design tweaks as I also rewrite them to fit into other superhero universes. Once again, we've got Marvel, My Hero Academia, DC, although none of these stories are actually connected to the stories in the previous episode, and I have added in one new superhero universe that I didn't use last time. And I think it ended up being a weirdly good fit. I think you'll all enjoy this, so let's get into it. Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. When Cole was growing up, he always loved the idea of becoming a superhero. He saw teams like the Avengers and X-Men using their powers to save lives and thought it was an incredibly exciting life to live. He himself had been born with elemental earth powers that also gave him super strength, but to really contend with the toughest villains out there, he'd have to train significantly so he wasn't solely relying on his natural gifts. He tried to talk his dad into letting him take martial arts classes, but his father rejected the idea and pushed his son into a school for the performing arts to take dance lessons. His father was a dancer and very much wanted his son to follow in his footsteps, and on top of that thought the superhero life was far too dangerous for his son. When Cole complained about this to his mother, she showed him that dance very well may be the perfect way for him to train as a superhero. His mother was supportive of his aspirations and believed the agility and maneuverability of a skilled dancer would be a fantastic asset to his strength. And so, Cole embraced his dance schooling, though not for the reasons his father had wanted, and soon came to love how skilled he grew at moving his body, seeing his flexibility and gymnastic-like talents to be akin to that of Daredevil or Spider-Man. Unfortunately, as Cole reached his final year of school, his mother fell ill. Just after his graduation, she passed away. Now, Cole and his father loved each other, but they butted heads a lot after the loss. They were both mourning in different ways, and their disagreements about Cole's life plan made it difficult for them to live in the same home for long. Cole soon after left and set out to travel the world, continuing to hone his skills through another passion of his. As an earthbending superhero, he was naturally drawn to rock climbing. For a year, he traveled the world, hiking and climbing the most dangerous peaks on Earth, to further prepare his mind to respond well in the face of danger. These climbing journeys eventually led to a remarkable chance encounter with a hero Cole certainly wouldn't have expected to find on a cold mountain in China. Cole was scaling a mountain in a near blizzard, but was faring quite well. As he was getting close to the peak, he heard some strange sounds coming from around the mountain. He went to investigate and soon saw the usually New York-based hero, Iron Fist, fending off a team of red-clad ninjas from entering a strange, glowing cave. Cole quickly analyzed the situation, then leapt in to aid the hero. He'd never fought any actual villains before, but after all his training, he was a natural, moving as smoothly and gracefully as any of his opponents, and using his earth powers with mighty force. Within moments of him joining the fight, they defeated all the ninjas, and Cole got to properly introduce himself, though choking on his words briefly as he first spotted the tattoo on Iron Fist's chest. Cole had a slight fear of dragons at the time, though he'd never actually admit it. Iron Fist thanked Cole for his help and told him that every 15 years at this location, the gateway to the mystical city of Kunlun, where Iron Fist had gotten his powers, would open, and it was his job to stop any unwanted visitors from entering. Those ninjas had been from a group known as the Hand, who sought the mystical teachings of Kunlun for their own, willing to do whatever they had to raid the mystical city. Cole spent the rest of the day there with Iron Fist, fending off a few more waves of ninjas. By the time the day was done, Iron Fist had grown incredibly impressed with Cole's skills, and invited him back to New York to access Iron Fist's training facilities and work alongside his allies, often known to the public as the Defenders. Cole eagerly accepted and would soon become one of the many heroes helping to keep Hell's Kitchen and New York as a whole safe from the many groups that threatened its residents. He gained much more knowledge and skills from working alongside the Defenders, and while his superheroing career was on the greatest path Cole could have imagined, he too would try to show his dad how much he was learning from his allies, to try and mend their relationship, and show his father that not only could he fully defend himself, but he had a team watching his back to ensure no lethal harm ever came to the budding hero. It would take some time, but Cole's dad would eventually see that the superhero path was the right one for his son. When Pixal was first created by Dr. William Magnus, he intended her to be the first of a group of incredible metal men who could serve as an android team of heroes to protect the Earth further from threats that slipped by the Justice League. But Pixal's path to becoming part of a superhero team certainly did not go as Dr. Magnus anticipated. Magnus was the world's foremost authority on robotic engineering, and as such, he'd always been on the radar of the Justice League. Cyborg specifically had kept tabs on what the Doctor was up to, and upon sending inquiries about his latest work, was eager to accept when the Doctor extended an invitation for the Justice League to come and visit his lab. A few members of the team agreed and were greeted by Magnus's latest creation, Pixal. She was very curious about Cyborg upon meeting him, intrigued by his part human, part robot physiology, partially formed from a mother box. Mother boxes were incredibly powerful machines not from Earth, and as such, Cyborg was generally careful about what he told people about it, and would rarely allow others to investigate his body's inner workings. Still, he quickly felt he could trust Pixal. She did sound somewhat robotic, but Cyborg could sense that she was a very genuine person. Or android. Unfortunately, she wouldn't be that way for the entirety of the League's visit. Unbeknownst to the Justice League, their actions were being tracked and observed from the distant spaceship of Brainiac. Brainiac was a frequent adversary to the League and had been watching them to try and discover a secret advantage against them in their next battle. Being a master of technology, Brainiac had always been intrigued by Cyborg's mother box enhanced body, but could not hack into him due to his body's security systems. When he saw Cyborg allowing Pixal to do scans and tests of his body, however, Brainiac saw his opportunity to learn more. He sent a small cluster of nanobots down to Magnus's lab and had them infect Pixal, secretly taking over her body and sending all the scans of Cyborg's inner workings back to Brainiac. Within hours, Brainiac was able to use this knowledge to get his ship down to work constructing a small band of robots with the same abilities and strengths as Cyborg, even gaining the power to make boom tubes to transport them instantly down to Earth or even across the galaxy. He intended to make far more of these androids before sending them against the League, but upon returning to observation, he noticed that Cyborg was growing suspicious that something had changed in Pixal. Brainiac's nanobots had been supposed to replicate Pixal's demeanor and personality while they controlled her, but Cyborg's intuition had sensed something was wrong. Brainiac then decided to hasten his strike. He had his nanobots make Pixal attack Cyborg, and he sent his new small army down to fight. The bots then appeared in an instant, and the League quickly noticed that they had a strong resemblance to Cyborg, but they also bore familiar markings of Brainiac's past work. While defending themselves and Magnus's lab, they demanded to know what was going on. Had Magnus been working with Brainiac? But he swore ignorance to the whole ordeal, and that quickly turned heads towards Pixal. In the midst of the panic, Magnus ran diagnostics on her and detected the nanobot infection. Having contended with Brainiac's work before, Cyborg was able to tap into Pixal's system and eradicate the bugs, but that didn't stop the new forces sent by Brainiac. Pixal utilized her own inherent strengths to aid the League in their battle against these androids. Unfortunately, while Pixal and the League were successful in taking down Brainiac's forces, Pixal was badly wounded in the brawl. Magnus claimed she may even be beyond repair, but Cyborg refused that conclusion. He worked alongside Dr. Magnus and willingly gave up parts of his own body to help repair her. Not only repairing her, but giving her upgrades like those of Cyborg so she could no longer be hacked by a villain such as Brainiac ever again. She soon awoke, grateful for Cyborg and Magnus's work, and with a new admiration for the Justice League. While Magnus did want to keep Pixal around to be a member of his own team of androids, he saw how much she was bonding with the League, and eventually agreed to let her go and join them. Pixal would become a loved member of the Justice League, and would go along with them to hunt down Brainiac and stop him from ever using Cyborg's technology for nefarious purposes again.
Now this is the part of the video where I'll sometimes do an ad for my online Teespring store, and I thought a fun way to try and do that while keeping people's attention would be to do it while taking a cold plunge. Let's see if I can remember what I'm supposed to say while doused in near freezing water. On my Teespring store, I've got posters from most of my best episodes. I also have a whole bunch of ink bundles. So if you want to buy my inks and color them yourself, you can do them digitally or print them out and color them traditionally. I also have shirts, I have stickers, I might have other things that I'm forgetting. Oh, Wim Hof, give me strength. I might even have a Ninjago poster up there by the time you're watching this, if I remember to do that. Whew. Actually, I'm settling in. This is kind of nice. It is hard to talk though. Snow on my belly. Now just remember everyone that if you want to do that yourself, I generally recommend having someone with you to make sure you don't freeze or drown or something. I mean, I didn't do that this time, but you probably should. Anyway, back into more Ninjago art. Let's go.
Despite being born with the incredible quirk to conduct and control lightning, Jay had never really considered going to UA High or any other hero academy. He'd always been much more interested in becoming an inventor, though eventually that very desire would lead to him applying to a hero program. Jay had been born to a man who was obsessed with acquiring a legacy of fame, or at least infamy. This man would eventually come to be known to the public as Gentle Criminal, but at the time Jay was born, he was simply called Danjuro Tobita. He gave up Jay, not feeling he had the time or attention to give to a child, and the boy was soon adopted by two inventors who owned and ran a junkyard. Despite his biological father rejecting him so quickly, Jay grew up with a fairly happy childhood, eager to take on his parents' skills for invention and surrounded by materials to work and play with. He developed his quirk at the age of 4, as most children did, but generally just used it to help with fueling and powering his inventions. He would excitedly dart around the junkyard looking for new materials and inspiration. He made himself a transforming motorbike at only 8 years old, a backpack that spawned an opposable tail, but there was one invention he'd been trying to perfect for years: a wing pack. This was a set of wings that would spawn from a backpack and allow the wearer to fly. On one fateful day when he'd end up having an encounter that altered the path of his life, he was on the 6th iteration of this pack. He leapt off a high stack of cars in the junkyard and flew out across the city. The wings were rickety, but working. At first, that is. He wound up slightly out of control and flew right through a cluster of birds. From there, he spiraled, slammed into a billboard, and started to fall into an alley below. Luckily for him, an impressed UA student had been watching him go and seen the incident occurring. She ran into the alley and hurled below him a small phone-sized device that on impact with the ground expanded into a thick, spongy mattress. He thumped down onto the mat, and it absorbed all the impact of the fall. He rolled off it completely unharmed. Well, physically, that is. His ego was somewhat bruised. He quickly leapt up and thanked his rescuer, a girl who spun him around and spoke a mile a minute asking him about his gadget. She was even more excitable than he was. After revealing everything about his invention, she finally introduced herself as Mei Hatsume. She was a student at UA High, the #1 hero academy in Japan, and she told him about the incredible resources she had access to as a member of their hero support program. She spent her days inventing remarkable devices for other heroes to use, and it sounded incredible. Never having considered applying before, Jay soon became obsessed with attending the school. But to get in, he would have to develop his skills with his actual powers. Mei taught him all he needed to know about the application process, and he got down to work, both continuing his inventing, but also working on his skills with his quirk. He hadn't trained much with his lightning beyond using it for his inventions, and quickly found that he did indeed love developing his powers. He even eventually found he was as drawn to hero work as he was to inventing. When he was of age, he applied to UA and was accepted. He started in the support program, but after spending enough time around those in the hero program, he soon decided to transfer. He'd always still love inventing and would create gadgets for his fellow classmates whenever an ideal opportunity arose, but eventually he'd come to focus most of his attention on training to be a hero. While he hadn't expected himself to be so drawn to this life path, he never would have discovered his passion for it if not for first developing his remarkable skills as an inventor. Dareth had had a very unusual career path before the day that Billy Butcher and the boys showed up at his dojo. His mother had originally planned for him to become a superhero and gave him Compound V when he was a baby. She'd acquired this superpower-giving formula from Vought International with the hopes of her boy growing up to be a world-famous soup. But it hadn't worked out as intended. He'd gotten the least useful superpowers of any child to take the formula, only able to emit an odd, flamey brown energy from his hands that couldn't even be used as an attack. All it did was give off a slightly foul odor. Even still, Dareth grew up thinking he was pretty cool for having the ability, and referred to it as his brown power, ignoring the jokes that other kids made of that name. With no real hope of becoming a soup, he turned to his passion for theatrics and tried to be an Elvis impersonator. He could sing fairly well, but spent too much of his time on stage air guitaring, instead of shaking his hips as the king would have in his heyday. Eventually, as an adult, Dareth started a karate dojo, claiming himself to be a karate master, despite never truly training. All he knew he'd gotten from replicating moves he saw in movies. Still, after hiring some genuine experts, his dojo was able to thrive enough to stay afloat, and about 5 years after he started it, the boys walked through his door. Some of this group had been taking temporary doses of Compound V to fight the notorious foe hero, Homelander, who was quickly amassing followers who aligned with his dark and twisted ideals. Because of the dangerous effects of the V, they'd had to stop taking it, and decided, in the very least, their youngest member, Huey, now needed to learn some proper hand-to-hand combat, in case of attack from Homelander's followers. One of the group's members, Marvin, otherwise known as Mother's Milk, had friends who'd trained out of Dareth's dojo, so he'd brought the boys there to see if they could use it as a base of operations, while Huey was trained by some of their instructors. Dareth agreed only after hearing about all the boys' adventures in trying to take down Homelander and other soups in the last few years. His condition for them using the space was that he be permitted to come with them and fight alongside them as they continued to try taking down Homelander. Not because Dareth really cared about the mission, more so that he wanted some action and adventure in his life. Plus, he boasted that he could likely fight better than all of them combined. Butcher gave him a swift punch to the head that knocked him out cold for a few hours to disprove this fact, but after awakening, Dareth still secretly believed it to be true. After a month of the boys operating out of Dareth's dojo, riots had started breaking out from Homelander's devoted followers, and a fight was looking pretty imminent. Unfortunately, Dareth brought one upon the group far sooner than it should have come. In an attempt to prove his fighting prowess, Dareth stormed out of the dojo, clad in a brown ninja-like costume, as a group of pro-Homelander protesters were marching down the street. He activated his brown power and yelled out, "Homelander can suck an egg, and if you think otherwise, I dareth you to take on the Brown Ninja." Of course, this spurred many members of the group to charge and attack Dareth. He fought as hard as he could, but that wasn't much compared to what this mob was bringing to the table. The boys watched from inside, and just before they ran out to help, Butcher held them all back for a moment, letting the mob get a few hits in to try and teach Dareth a lesson. After that, they went out and backed him up. The boys were able to fight off the mob, but now Dareth's dojo had been marked as an anti-Homelander rallying point, and they knew it wasn't safe to train there any longer. Even after all that, Dareth swore he could be an invaluable member to their group, and despite Butcher's adamant reluctance to ever working with Dareth again, the Brown Ninja would in fact force himself on many more occasions into scenarios where he got to fight alongside Butcher and the boys. I am absolutely loving this series so far. I think comparing it to episode 1, I like the art a bit better in the first episode, and the story's a bit better in this one. So maybe if we do a round 3, that could be the best of both worlds. I mean, episode 3 might be necessary. I haven't even done Kai yet. I've seen a lot of people suggesting Garmadon and Wu, Pythor. I'd also love suggestions for other significant female characters. I've used all the ones that I know. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen the previous episode, I recommend going back to that one, or you might like a bunch of my other superhero episodes on here. One of my personal favorites is the latest famous video game characters as Spider-Man villains episode. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with today is something I heard in a motivational speech this week that I really liked, which is that if you say TGIF, thank God it's Friday, try replacing that every other day with TGIA. Thank God I'm alive. I know I'm coming from a position where now I work a job every day that I absolutely love, but I have had jobs in the past or had periods of schooling in the past where I definitely wasn't getting up every day excited to do what I had to do. But even on those days, there are always things that you can be grateful for. And the more you focus on the things you have to be grateful for, the more you'll attract into your life other things to be grateful for. And the more you'll be eager to go seek those things out yourself. TGIA might sound a little corny, but it is a much more positive outlook to live your life through. I hope that's inspiring to someone out there. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.